1, 2, 3, listen.
So at Blippar, we combine augmented reality and computer vision, which is the field of artificial intelligence that mimics sight, to be able to understand the physical world and give you contextualized, valuable information back. So this is about providing the software that allows camera lenses to behave like our eyes. So essentially, the camera lens becomes an extension of our eyesight, our third eye. And we're so used to typing a question in when we want an answer. We spent the last 20 years going to a search bar and typing a few words in to be able to get the response to what we would like to know about. What we're now entering a world of is allowing our camera lens to do that for us. So we're complementing text-based search by having visual search. And if you think about a very live example, the chairs that you're sitting on right now, if you really like those chairs and you wanted to buy one right now, and you try to explain and articulate in a search bar what this chair is like, you would struggle. And you struggle because the reality is that however articulate we think we are, the reality is that it's actually quite difficult sometimes for us to express ourselves with words. And visual search is really about engaging with the physical world, allowing the camera lens to have pure recognition and cognition, and then giving you information back. In this example, I point at the sky with my phone, I get the weather. I point at the Golden Gate Bridge, I get a lot of information on that landmark, and I might find out things that happen to be going on in San Francisco on that day. Does everybody feel comfortable with what augmented reality is? And out of interest, I'm not going to pick on anybody, but how many people would be confident in explaining AR to a friend? Okay, so augmented reality, which I'm sure a lot of you will hear about frequently, is essentially overlaying digital content on the physical world. So you have a tablet, you have a phone, you point at something, it recognizes it, and then digital content comes up. That's all augmented reality is. It's bridging the gap between the physical and the digital world, and it might be digital content on a product, it might be on a landmark, so many examples. We've been doing AR for the last 7 years. For those of you who don't have our app, I obviously would recommend that you download it because it's a very easy and intuitive way to be able to experience AR with the physical world. But it's not just about the app. We also have a platform that allows others to create AR experiences. We have a whole host of AR experiences that are outside our app. And more what you find is that we're moving into an ecosystem of AR solutions. Now, if there's one slide that I would like you to sort of remember out of this presentation, is this one, which is actually, in a way, you look at it and it's probably the most boring slide. But the concept is really important because we speak a lot about AR, and over the last few years, you've seen a lot of emergence of companies working with AR. But for us, we had a very big aha moment around 2013, where by that stage, we'd worked with around 2,000 brands, augmenting their message to their consumers. So if you think about a Coke can, for example, we would essentially create a campaign for Coke where you point your phone at that Coke can and something would happen. It might be entertainment, it might be a link to the latest offer, information about the product. But what we realize is that the moment you remove that branded product from your line of sight, your phone is basically just engaging with whatever is in front of it, a table, a chair, a room, and you get nothing back. And so for us, that big aha moment was, how can you look to augment reality if you don't understand reality in the first place? And so the big investment, the big sort of gamble in a way for us as a company was to also go down the computer vision route, which is around understanding the physical world, and combine them both. So you can see essentially what I'm explaining is, and unfortunately I can't do a demo, which is what I wanted to do today, but you'd have our app, you'd engage with whatever is in front of you, you'd get information about this building, you'd get information about the things in front of you, and if branded products happen to have digital content attached to it, that would come up too. But what's really important is that when the camera lens is essentially sweeping in your line of sight, there is always something interesting coming back. And that's why computer vision is extremely important. And this is essentially computer vision in action. So computers, when they look at the physical world, all they see is numbers, as I'm sure all of you know. That's all they see, numbers. And so what we're doing is essentially allowing the computer to see beyond the numbers and actually recognize what is in front of them. So in this picture, it's about distinguishing a child from an adult, within an adult, a man from a woman, a dog, the grass, and every single thing that is in front of it to be able to then take action as a result. This is just a slide I always like to put up because what it essentially shows is that computing power is getting more and more sophisticated, but in a way what it's doing is mimicking our senses. So 20 years ago, it was essentially around speaking and kind of, basic texting. We moved to touch-based computing, for those of you who remember that, in the sort of early 2000s or so. We then moved a combination of audio and video, and again, ever more sophisticated. We're now in a world of pure immersive behavior, bringing all of our senses together, and computing power is giving us the ability to do just that. Message from Tim Cook. I think the important thing for me here is that all the big guys, be it Apple, Facebook, Google, Amazon, Microsoft, they all talk about AR becoming mainstream in the next 12 to 18 months. It could be 10, it could be 2 years. The reality is that the big players are investing very heavily in these technologies, as are companies like ours. And every time something like this has happened, where you have a whole new field coming forward and kind of taking over the way we engage with our everyday lives, it's never really the incumbent that takes over. So the Facebook of AR is unlikely to be Facebook, just like kind of the Facebook battle was not won by Google. And you kind of every few years you have new companies coming in and really trying to capitalize on new opportunities. And it feels right now like we are at the very nascent stage of where AR and computer vision are going. Big players, medium-sized players, small players, all trying to figure out how best to be able to offer technology that will really make people react positively and change user behavior. With Apple, of course, they released AR Kit back in September, allowing developers to be able to bring AR to your phones. Google have done the same with AR Core, and there's a multitude of new technologies coming out. So what I thought I'd do over the next 4 or 5 minutes before I finish is to just give you examples of how computer vision and AR are being used in a whole area of new technologies that are coming our way. So we talk a lot about driverless cars. Actually, the really intelligent part of what's going on here is what the camera lens is doing. Because the camera lens is essentially giving the car the ability to operate at least as well as a human being would, if not better. Of course, we've heard stories over the last few days, and there have been very tragic incidents, but this is technology evolving every day and improving. And with computer vision, there's a very simple example that I always give, which is imagine being in one of these cars and coming up to a pedestrian crossing. And you have 3 people about to cross over that pedestrian crossing. Young teenagers holding baseball bats. Now, just process that image. 3 17-year-olds holding baseball bats. They might be on their way to a baseball game, and they're just going to go and have a nice afternoon out. Or they might be slightly menacing and intending to do something pretty bad with those baseball bats. Computer vision is about figuring that out. And how does that happen? The camera lens interprets the face profiles, kind of eyesight, anything that might give clues as to how the behavior of those people is going to lead to an action over the next minute. And if computer vision is sophisticated enough and it identifies a credible threat, then what would happen is that the car would turn around and go a separate way. So kind of an extreme example, but just it sort of illustrates how the camera lens really has to behave in a very different way to what camera lenses have done over the last few years. Healthcare. We talk a lot about this. This is not about substituting the role of surgeons and doctors. This is about making them be able to take decisions in a far more efficient way. Think about a fracture. A doctor's facing a fracture, a patient has a fracture. What if they were able to, within 30 seconds, look at a database of 5,000 fractures that are quite similar to the one that they have in front of them, giving them a recommended course of action? And what if that doctor, and in this case, we're talking, say, in a university, would be able to have in augmented reality how to go about being able to deal with this patient. You can see how from a healthcare perspective there is so much that can be done through AR. Education is fascinating. How many of you have kids? Okay, so this is a really good one to test with kids because the retention rate that you see in education from using augmented reality is absolutely incredible. The studies that we've done, and we've worked with around 20,000 schools, is that the retention rate goes up by 65% if you use augmented reality versus a traditional textbook. And again, bring this to life. Think about a subject that might have bored you. Geography, for example. You have a textbook, you're just going page by page, and you're just reading, and you kind of move on. What if in a particular country, augmented reality brought a country to life? It might be Italy, it might be Spain, it might be Germany. All of a sudden, the way a child is learning is no longer through paper, but actually through an experience that has come up in front of them through augmented reality. It's absolutely fascinating to see this in young kids, but actually also the more sophisticated the subject, the more you realize that you can do far more with AR. Training and manufacturing is another good example. You think about the hundreds of pages of manuals that you need to be able to fix any problem in advanced engineering or advanced manufacturing, and all of a sudden that goes away, being able to have technicians either use tablets, phones, or headsets to be able to recognize what a problem might be, go back to previous problems that others have had, watch tutorials, and then be aided step by step into how to fix something. No manuals, no papers, nothing else to carry, but a camera lens that is pointing at a particular problem and then coming up with solutions. And marketing and entertainment, which is kind of our space and what we've done for the last few years, FMCG brands have been the quickest over the last few years to adopt AR and computer vision and bring their products to life. As I said earlier, we've done this with over 2,000 brands, and they choose to do anything from having a 4 to 5 week campaign where their product comes to life. It might be an explanation about their supply chain. It might be a link to a particular offer. And what happens there is that the dwell time increases massively. Think about a product that you might just use to be able to drink. But if that product comes to life and is valuable, interesting, engaging information that you're getting back, then you're actually holding this thing for a good 3 to 4 minutes, which is actually the average dwell time that you have with a lot of these campaigns through augmented reality. So it's a really interesting way to be able to engage with consumers, but then of course it gives you a lot of data. It allows brands to know when consumers are engaging with their product, what part of the day is the most important to them, where in the country this is happening. There's so much data that can be captured because the camera lens is obviously being able to retrieve a lot of this and providing valuable data to brands. So where are we going, with all of this? I mean, it's in a way, some people say it's slightly scary to think that the physical world just will be coming to life everywhere we go, but it's also extremely useful because I haven't been in Bristol in a long time, and to know that I could navigate around Bristol through AR, find information that is useful, is actually obviously something I do a lot because I'm in the field, but it's extremely, extremely valuable. I'm going to ask you a question though, because this is always something that starts crossing over with privacy. Facial recognition is obviously based on computer vision. And a lot of people get, rightly so, very concerned about where facial recognition is going, which is why the conversation around privacy is so important and getting this right from a regulatory perspective. But let me give you a very simple example through facial recognition, which is that you are absolutely comfortable in sharing your nationality, not necessarily your name, but your nationality, maybe a medical condition that you might have, and phone number of a next of kin. Now you have chosen to share that information. And you're in Bristol, you don't live here, you've left all your documents and ID at the hotel, and you faint. And you're in the street and you run into trouble and there's nothing on you. Now that gives people the ability to be able to point their phone at you and get the information that you were comfortable to share. So nationality, next of kin, and maybe a medical condition. That can save a life. If you're in a foreign country, I could take you to the right embassy. If you have that medical condition, I can do something about it. But here's the question, how many of you would be comfortable in doing that? So I'm going to roughly say that kind of at best around 10% of people in this room. And it just goes to show that we are a very long way in terms of our own behavior and our own confidence, in this case in facial recognition, to think about how AR and computer vision might change the way we live over the next few years. But it's coming, it's very exciting, and just to really end and bring it back to the world of brands and agencies, we are seeing more and more that the quality, the size of the AR campaigns that the biggest brands in the world, the biggest agencies are carrying out are increasing exponentially, have done over the last 12 months in particular, following a lot of the announcements from Apple and Google and Facebook and others. The level of spend from advertising budget is increasing significantly into AR, and it's a very exciting time. So I'll end by recommending one thing. I'm basically finishing a few minutes ahead of time. There are minutes I'm giving you to be able to use efficiently with other things, but there are also hopefully a couple of minutes that you will store to later on download our app and have a little play with AR and computer vision. Thank you very much.